Part 2, Timeline and Sources of History. Who contributes to all these sources of history? Historians themselves, but also archaeologists, epigraphists who study ancient inscriptions, anthropologists who study human societies and their cultures, experts in literature and languages, and some more. In addition, in the last 50 years or so, scientific studies have been contributing more and more to the reconstruction of the past. For example, studies of ancient climates, chemical studies, or excavated materials, and studies of the genetics of ancient people have provided fresh insights which supplement the more usual sources. And when historians study recent history, which usually means the last two or three centuries, another source is newspapers. For the last few decades, electronics, media, television, the internet, etc., can also be consulted. This is an activity. Please click the screenshot. The beginnings of human history. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, have walked the planet for about 3 lakh years. This appears to be a very long time. Yet, it is only a tiny fraction of the Earth's history. Let's have a quick look at our early history. Early humans faced many challenges from nature and lived in bands or groups to help each other. They were constantly seeking shelter and food and were mainly hunters and gatherers. This means that they relied on hunting and collecting edible plants and fruits for their survival. Our early ancestors also had certain beliefs about the natural elements and possibly about some notion of the afterlife. What's afterlife? A life that begins after death. These groups lived in temporary camps, rocks, shelters, or caves and communicated with each other using languages that are now lost. They used fire and started making objects that made their life easier, like improved stone axes and blades, arrowheads, and other tools. Aspects of their life are visible in rock paintings found in hundreds of caves all over the world. Some of those paintings depict simple figures or a few symbols. Others are more detailed and represent scenes with animals or humans. In time, these early humans learned to make simple ornaments such as stone or shell beads, pendants made of animal teeth, and sometimes exchange them with other groups. The first crops. Over long ages, the Earth's climate has gone through many changes. At certain times, it was very cold and much of the earth was covered with ice. This is called an ice age, as you will learn in greater detail in science. Later, when the climate warmed up, this ice partly melted, and the resulting water swelled the existing rivers and eventually drained into the oceans. The last ice age lasted from over 1 lakh years ago to around 12,000 years ago. Afterwards, living conditions improved for humans in many parts of the world. They started settling down and cultivating cereals and grains. They also domesticated animals such as cattle, goats, etc. With more food available, these communities grew in size and number and often settled down near rivers. This was not only because the availability of water, but also because the soil would be more fertile there. It made the process of growing crops easier. You can screenshot. As communities grew, so did their social complexity. Leaders of or chieftains were responsibilities for the well-being of the people, and everyone collectively worked towards the community's welfare. For example, there was no sense of individual ownership. The lands were collectively sowed and harvested. As time went by, hamlets grew in sizable villages that exchanged goods, mostly food, clothing, and tools. Slowly, networks of communication and exchange were established among those villages, and some of them grew into small towns. New technologies appeared, for example, pottery for making pots and other clay objects, and the use of metal, copper first, iron later on, which helped make durable tools, objects of daily use, and ornaments. We will see in chapter 6 how the stage prepared for the emergence of what is civilization. For now, it is important to remember that this early process of humanity had to face many challenges. At some crucial times, humanity could have almost disappeared, as some earlier species did. We never know those early humans to whose courage and persistence we owe our existence today. Before we move on, we have explored some ways to learn more about our past. The concept of a timeline helps us to understand the sequence of historical events at different times. There are different ways of measuring time: years, decades, centuries, millenniums. Sources of history are many. They help us reconstruct and interpret historical events. We have also had a brief look into the lives of early humans and how human societies grew more complex in time. Questions and activities and projects. Screenshot, and this is homework of this chapter. This chapter is done today. Chapter 4 is finished. Good day.